World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Little Budworth, England. A very inconspicuous small village which, by all stretches of the imagination, doesn't mean very much in terms of the United Kingdom and England in particular. But today, it has a track which, for all intents and purposes, for those who love touring car style action, it is a staple. This is one track which makes the rounds on the British calendar year in and year out. And today, with World Pro Racing, it also holds that distinction of being the second round of the championship. We are here for some wonderful, wonderful work going on forward, and our GT4 work from AMD is going to be right in on the line for you. Oulton Park, the place. I'm Jake Sperry, Kieran McGinley, alongside me for the ride. Kieran, this is a smaller style circuit. It takes a lot of peculiarities around it, a lot of elevation change, and has some elements of a club circuit feel to it. But what you look at from this Oulton Park track is that it has just about everything that's needed to put a very difficult race together on the book. It does have straights, it does have some very difficult corners, but it's one that's very predicated on having very good downforce and traction as you go around.
Almost like a carbon opposite of what Spa was when we went there 2 weeks ago. It's got those long straights followed by long sweeping corners and, more importantly, wide parts of the circuit. When we head to Oulton Park here, it's a very narrow circuit. It really does reward those drivers who can put in a really good lap time in qualifying. And with an hour race up ahead of these drivers later on tonight, they might find difficult to be frustrating. There's a lot of narrow parts of the circuit, plenty of undulation, and plenty of mid-speed corners to boot with those really narrow parts of the track. So if you don't get a good qualifying result, you might not be setting yourself up for glory later down the line.
No, you might not. And this is a championship, of course, a 5-round championship where you don't have very long at all in terms of racing action to make everything work for you. So you have to really take those advantages as they come along. And an Oulton Park circuit like this will be ones which those, in terms of the manufacturers of this championship, that will be looking really, really happy and healthy for. For others, maybe not so much. This is a smaller circuit. This is going to be one which will be helping out the Ginettas. This is going to be one that's going to be helping out those vehicles which don't necessarily have top-end speed, but make all of that ability back up in the corners. And it's that dynamic of balance of performance, the ebbs and flows or the tipping of the scales one way or the other. That's what we really see, Kieran, over the course of action.
And where we normally see these GT3 cars, these massive aero packages on the car, there's not really the same level of aero on these GT4 cars, so they'll find it difficult to really make use of those higher speed corners. That being said, that makes them no less fun to drive around a circuit like this. If there's one thing we know about these drivers, they do like this track. It gives it a lot of fun to drive in some of these lower performance cars. It really does bring the best out of them, and I'm sure we're in for some good close racing, if nothing else.
And that good close racing only happens with us here at World Pro Racing. We are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch, as well as ESTV, the Esports Television Network, TVM Sport, and motorsport.tv on top of that. But you can also get your fix of racing here with World Pro Racing by heading over to worldproracing.com/event, and that will get you into the action. If you're looking for some sim racing efforts, be it for those who are just starting out or those who are looking to get some really serious competition, that could really be the case. We take a little look then to our practice as we keep our eyes on things at the moment. Luke Whitehead currently topping those timing stands at this moment in time. But Kieran, you know, practice doesn't necessarily mean anything in the long context. It's all about how you put yourself into the mix and say, okay, this is where I want to be. This sort of pace I will show you right now before I'll show you the ultimate pace I have when qualifying comes into fruition.
Yeah, it's the ultimate holding your cards close to the chest session. You don't want to give too much away in these practice sessions. You don't want to give too much away to your opposition, to your rivals. You want to make sure you have your optimum pace in qualifying and ready to just shock the other drivers with how much pace you've held back. Looking at the weather though, there's rain forecast. There is rain on the way. It's about half an hour away, and if the drivers are lucky, they'll get a dry qualifying session. Should be an interesting start to this race, however.
It definitely is, and they've got 10 minutes left in practice. It's 15 minutes of qualifying, so the way that looks, it looks like it's just about to start raining here by the forecast as the race is going to start. Now that brings a whole different element of dimensions as they go into qualifying, because I'm pretty sure that they'll have some elements of Parc Fermé rules that they'll be dealing with out there on track here. And so at what point do you look at qualifying and say that there'll be drivers maybe in a good position or a bad position, depending on who wants to put the times in on the board? Because that rain might just come into play and might just make a huge difference into how drivers set up their cars for qualifying.
Well, you see how narrow this track is. It will really favour those who go for the track position. Don't be too surprised if you see drivers go for a dry setup and bank on the rain then coming and try and nurse the car through those tricky conditions with maybe a little less aero and a little less grip than they may prefer, especially through these higher speed corners. They'll really value track position at this race, so they will pretty much try and get the track position no matter what. So I'm expecting dry setups in qualifying, maybe a tweak of the aero here or there, but no major changes. They'll want to try and get track position in this qualifying session. What's going to be interesting though is how packed that track will be at the very start of qualifying when the green light at the end of the pit lane actually does go on.
Yeah, and it's that green light at the end of pit lane, which may just be a great determining factor. You can see track temperature is very cold today. It's 22 degrees, 16 degrees air temperature right now. And as we know, Kieran, when it does get wetter, the track gets even colder and tyres get a little bit more slipperier as you go on through. So I'm sure these drivers will be looking at these conditions going, this isn't quite what we want, is it? But they'll try and get out there and set as good of a time as they possibly can. There is Teemu Pukki. They're in 7th position right now, 1 second adrift at this moment in time, and hoping that all of the pace works together and brings every nice bit. And you can see there already, there's the wipers going. So is that an indication of things to come at this stage?
I'm not so sure, actually, from Timu Polki. I can't really see any rain out there. Of course, it's exemplified and magnified by the amount of water that falls onto the windscreen as you're travelling around here at the best part of 80-90, looking into the treble figures of miles per hour as he's getting all onto the grass, then really pushing the limits of grip on that car. There's the limit of grip as he takes a huge ride across the gravel there, as Polki at least getting his mistakes and at least finding out there's no grip there in this practice session. This is the last time. Oh, Harry Spears loses it on the exit there, and that is not great. That's on the exit of Cascades then, and lighting up those rear tyres on the curb, not really where he wants to be. But as I said, Jake, this is the practice session. This is the final chance to iron out those mistakes and just find out where the limits of grip are.
And those limits are going to be tested very importantly by the number 5 of Tahamali in the Ashtois Ginetta. Moving progress up the hill, you can see going to 4th gear, not running that full stretch then from the hairpin all the way down to this very tough right-left chicane, which is all about accuracy. This track is an accuracy track, very much like how a street circuit, you would say, is an accuracy track. A lot of these corners around this place are designed for you to lose time if you get ever so slightly off the racing line. So precision, this is a race, you'd say, where the driver who is the most precise is going to pick up the result.
Yeah, and it's very punishing on track limits, albeit there really isn't any. You've just got grass and gravel on the outside, a real old school circuit that punishes mistakes. As we see then Mali now making his way through Lodge Corner and onto this start-finish straight, which really isn't straight. And there's a heck of a lot of undulation as he comes around the final bend and over the start-finish line. And there is a 1:41.5, so pretty consistent with his time so far. 5th fastest in the session as he makes his way through Old Hall Corner, now down the avenue and Denton's. You're downhill on the braking then in towards Cascades. But yeah, one thing that the drivers will notice about this track is there is a lot of undulation. That suspension is going to be worked hard here.
Yeah, it certainly will. So a lot of need, especially in the suspension here today. And what they'll also be keeping an eye out on is their ride heights, which, of course, as they go around, you don't often talk about it in GT3s, but it is important to talk about. If there is that threat of rain coming, then they're going to want a setup that's a little bit higher up so that they can generate more grip.
They will indeed. Looking at the weather, though, there's very, very still out on the track in terms of wind speed. So that rain might slowly approach, and it might just be slow enough, the wind, not to pick up any kilometres per hour. So that does mean that the rain will slowly make its way out of the track. That could mean then that certain parts of this track might be, you know, experiencing some rainfall, whilst others might not. And if that's the case, then that means the rain's going to stick around longer if there is no wind to blow this rain away. Here's Mikhail Murchia as he makes his way through that chicane here. I believe that's Hislops, and then through Knickerbrook, then through this long right-hander. Very easy to run a little wide here. You don't want to get too early onto the power. Up now we go through Clay Hill, through Water Tower, and then towards Druids Corner as we try and find the braking zone there. Such a narrow circuit here. Through we go then through Druids Corner and making our way up towards Lodge Corner in that BMW. 13th fastest out there so far in this practice session, with just now under 4 minutes to go.
Yep, so not bad at all at the moment from Mikhail Merchiaka. 1.7 seconds adrift at this stage, making that drive up the Dearly, which has many similarities to a certain corner over at Coldwell Park, of course, Oulton Park, and moving up to P7, just 1 second behind now over the course of action. A little bit of it, as it seems, of a reduced field right now. Only 19 drivers here today looking to take on this second round, and maybe it is due to the fact that this track is a little bit more narrow, it's a little bit more difficult to put everything together, and it's going to be a very tough battle I think we're going to see out there on track. But the one other thing that I'm probably keeping my eyes out on is Maximilian Vady there in 6th position as Spears goes for another big moment then in the Aston Martin. But I think this is going to be a very important point to look at here from Vady, who has moved into the KTM, because if that is the case, which it is, you can see it is a KTM out there on track, that is a change of car from round 1 to round 2, which by the very intent of the rules of this championship, you are not allowed to do.
Well, he might be pulled aside by the stewards for that reason. But anyway, he's driving the KTM and making his way up Deer Leap and on towards the start-finish line. As he does cross the line, he still remains 6th fastest in this practice session. He'll get 2 laps more if he wants to, at least of this pace, as he makes his way to start yet another lap. But at the moment, then, Luke Whitehead is at the top of the standings by 0.7 of a second ahead of Sheldon Muscat, and it's Hamada Akizi rounding off the top 3. Jordan Soanes in 4th place. Taha Mali, who's our leader of the championship, currently 5th fastest, with there you can see Maximilian Vadi in 6th place. Top 6 covered by 1 second.
Yeah, they certainly have been, and we keep an eye out on Luke Whitehead as well in that Audi. Hardly anyone chose an Audi. In fact, he's the only one out there today in the Audi. And one of the keys that the Audi has, maybe, that you'd say, Kieran, compared to other vehicles that are out there in this field, say the McLarens and the Porsches, the Ginettas, the Mercedes, is that short wheelbase that the Audi has, which gives it that ability to throw into the corner a little bit more quicker.
Yeah, it's really, really good, an Audi. For that short wheelbase, for the handling, you can, as you say, chuck the car into the corner. It's quicker to respond, and it's a much more agile car, much like the KTM that Vadi is driving here. That short wheelbase really does help with the handling, but it can be a little bit costly in other areas. If you've got a shorter wheelbase, there's less the aerodynamics of the car can actually do in order to create the airflow and maybe stick the car to the ground a little bit more. So where you lack in the aerodynamics and the amount of aero you produce, you make up for with that mechanical grip, which you do need around here at Oulton Park.
You really do, and it does show you don't have very long straights. Maybe that run up, of course, past the island bend over to the Shell Oils corner. That is probably the only place that you've got a real run of getting something done. Maybe over the hilltop to Hislops might be the only other place on circuit you can find it, as Jordan Soanes in the team car is looking to try and move on through and find maybe a little look past that Ginetta just in front on the brakes of Taha Mali, who is there in 6th position at this stage in practice. And it's worth noting that those two were tied on time. Merjeka still there in 7th. Did find a little bit of improvement over that lap. But to Taha Mali, who said at the end of 2 weeks ago, I would say, I've got all the confidence in the world. Watch out. I'm going to absolutely love this here. Well, he's definitely not showing anything at the moment as practice comes to a close.
Yeah, but you have to remember as well that this is a session where you're not going to show too many cars. You're going to hold them as close to your chest as possible. I'd wait for qualifying and see how it all pans out. Harry Spears then finishing that session then with a 1:41.7, although it was an invalid lap. So that's practice done, and as you could probably see there, Luke Whitehead nearly 3/4 of a second clear of any other car in that practice session. I wonder how that's going to translate to qualifying pace.
I'll tell you what, that's so important to have that as a margin. You've got 0.7 of a second on the field. It gives you such great confidence to go out and drive in that manner, and you've got qualifying coming up. I did take a little look over, though, at the skies just at the end of the session, and it said rain in 10 minutes as they went on through. So rain in 10 minutes means there is going to be a huge emphasis on getting out on track and getting a time in early, because with about 5 minutes to go, you would argue at the end of qualifying, rain is forecast.
And this is going to be important for the drivers. This is going to be where we see all 19 drivers make their way, barge their way out onto the circuit. Then they're going to try and desperately find some clean air to make sure that they can get the track they need to set the lap time. Should be a pretty interesting start to this qualifying session. And if the rain does hit later on, we might just be hearing a very, very quiet Oulton Park for the last couple of minutes.
We very much could do, but this is the place that you need to find. If you haven't had the chance already, you're watching World Pro Racing, wherever it may be, on whatever channels that you may, you can always go to subscribe to World Pro Racing, be it where you are. And in fact, we don't even need to have a little look at that scrambling in qualifying for dry track, because we've got wet track already. The rain is falling here then at Oulton Park, and everybody now has got nothing to gain from that practice. It's a completely clean slate for qualifying.
Yeah, you say that though, but the rush will still be on, because that rain is going to get heavier throughout this qualifying session. So there's still going to be that scramble to get themselves out on track. Of course, you want a track that's at least damp not sodden and wet, as that will obviously slow the cars down with the wet tyres and the friction that the water does create. So there's still going to be that scramble. It's just that it's going to be tougher to do because it takes you a longer time to make it around the circuit whilst it is raining, of course. But yeah, I'm still expecting the same scramble, and let's see who can find themselves out on top here in this qualifying session.
It does say damp at the moment for the track. We'll see when damp becomes a different word out there on screen for track dynamic at this stage. But this is going to be very tough because they will not know where their markers are out there on circuit. They've just done a full practice session in the dry. They move to the wet, and this is going to be a real test of driving capabilities. We haven't really talked about how these vehicles will handle in the wet. If you've got a really stable setup underneath you, that could be a huge benefit right now here in these wet weather conditions.
Absolutely, and this is where we'll see what sort of setups the drivers have gone for, what sort of kind of car they've created, and this may be a reason why Luke Whitehead was so far ahead, as we see a car already come into the pit lane then. I think that was the number 10 of Simon Spett then, who decides to come back into the pit. Samir Foch also into the pit lane as well. As you can see, they're riding on board with Harry Spears in the Sidemax Motorworks car, making his way through Old Hall Corner, and then it's down the avenue through Denton's we go, and then braking then for Cascades, almost a little bit of trail braking. As you can see, the sheen on the curb on the left hand side, how much water there's down already. Little bit of the back end twitching as he makes his way through Cascades, now in towards Lakeside as you make your way and size up the island bend, slowing the car down here, down a gear through there, a little bit of understeer if you're not careful, now into the Shell Oils corner, then lots of banking towards the inside, then try and use that to your advantage in these tricky conditions as you now make your way back onto the power as you head towards Britain's chicane. Then as you see, then still a little bit of braking there, trying to attack the first part of the curb and try not to clout the second part of the curb, otherwise that will happen and a trip across the grass will be mandatory as you now make your way over the top of Hilltop, and we'll see now he'll back out of that lap, but hopefully he'll stay on the power towards Hislops.
Yep, so that's how easily it can go wrong. There is Jan Nicholas Erbrick in the McLaren, making his way through then at Knickerbrook and up the Clay Hill, past the water tower and over towards Druids here. Two left-handers, very inconspicuous here. The water tower is very tough to get right because it sets up this entire run through Druids, and the last thing you want through a very committed corner is to be running wide. Then you've got the Lodge corner coming up here. This is at the last place on the lap. You can go and make the move. It's almost like riding a roller coaster through the bumps as you go to that right, and then you're up and down, and Erbrick finding out just how difficult it is through the final corner, getting it all out of shape, really jamming the brakes to make sure the car stays on the island, and that is no lap counted coming across the line. Whitehead then, quickest of everybody then, a 46.5 then as the opening get-around, has a second over Jack Noller in second, and then you've got Tinko van der Velde then in third place. So not many drivers able to put a lap in on the board in the opening sectors, in the opening laps, because of the fact that they're trying to find their markers.
As well, the fact that the track is just going to get worse and worse throughout this qualifying session as Sheldon Muscat goes third fastest, Alex Leaf into fifth fastest, and Mikael Majeka now in seventh place, just over 2 seconds back from that provisional pole position time. There is Sheldon Muscat then in the GT Omega RPM Esports Mercedes as he now makes his way out of Cascades and, well, actually no, into Cascades as he hits some styrofoam then, and that's going to be a nightmare for the team to actually pick out of that front grille.
It certainly will. The good thing is it's virtual, so that will just be a clean reset and back then to get things going. There is Tinko van der Velde in the fourth position right now, the number 66 Aston Martin, looking to make a good amount of progress. Is there in fourth position right now in terms of the efforts being done, so it looks like a good start, but now has just dropped down into fifth because Jimmy Holm has now moved the Porsche up into third position. So a really, really good bit of time work from Jimmy, who of course isn't in a Ferrari for this championship, but my goodness, is he trying to make everything work. Van der Velde making his way now to the Lodge corner.
Yeah, and it's obviously we'd like to see Jimmy Holm in his trusty homing missile Ferrari, that lime green car. He still brings a little bit of lime green to this Porsche then, and still the 777, but he's got just the Porsche here as his homing missile now in towards the Shell Oils corner as he takes the outside line going through there. Now technically on the inside there is all that rubber, and obviously when rubber gets wet it gets very slippery, so sometimes taking the racing line into some of these corners may not be the way to go, especially if you're trying to get the fastest lap possible. Might be worth seeing if you can try and take an outside line, see if you can carry a little bit more momentum through the corner as Jimmy Holm there has to pull to one side. He didn't quite get that section right out of Britain's and over Hilltop there.
No, he didn't, and we're starting to see drivers who are getting it correct right now. Vady in the KTM goes to second. Soames in the Mercedes has gone third. There is Taha Mali, who is down in 9th position at the moment, championship leader. The rain really proving to be a bit difficult in these damp conditions right now. Not enough to really scare drivers, but that run actually through the Deer Leap is going to be really scary the wetter it goes. Mali goes third right now, just 300ths behind Maximilian Vady there in second. But the key is that this track will get wetter, and when it does, places which are not normally difficulties become difficulties.
Absolutely, and that is just not what you want to hear, really, is it? Just corners that should be pretty easy in the dry just become more and more difficult the more rain that falls then, as Vady then goes second fastest. But the gap between first and second place, 0.939 seconds. Luke Whitehead is on an absolute charge. He's the only driver, I believe, into the 146s, and by quite some margin.
3/10 in the opening sector, half a second in the middle sector, and then a couple tenths there, or a tenth in the final sector. So it does show fastest in all three at this stage, but Vady now has just improved on that last lap and has gone to a 46.9, so now brings the gap down to 0.8 of a second only at this stage. And Jordan Soames, looking to make that charge to the line, goes fourth fastest then with that attempt. And that's the key here that we're seeing here from these drivers. They are improving those times because they are getting a bit more of an understanding of where they can push the limits out there on circuit. They'll only get so far because, of course, we know that this track is going to continue just to get wet and difficult.
Yeah, the conditions are going to deteriorate throughout this session. We're expecting the rain to get heavier than it already is. So this is where the drivers, yes, they'll have to try and experiment as to where the grip is, but it's not going to be too long before that grip just simply isn't there anymore. They've got at least a couple of minutes before that does happen as we follow Hamada Akizi in the number 404 Ashtois racing car in that Porsche, making his way up towards Lodge Corner then in this final braking zone on the track before you have to get back onto the power then through Deer Leap and then onwards towards the start finish line. Currently 7th fastest in this qualifying session. Akizi comes across the line, puts it onto the front row of the grid then, and 6.5 tenths now away from the provisional pole position man of Luke Whitehead.
Yep, so that's a great time by Hamada Akizi as we try and catch on the cameras Maximilian Vady. There he is, making that progress through and searching for times out there overall, descending now up and down over the bumps in towards the Lodge Corner, hoping that this time is going to do a little bit better here. The virtual drivers by TX3 driver out there going through that final lap, making that charge over towards the line, and that will remain at third position there. It was a 47 flat on that attempt going forward. So your top five: Whitehead, Akizi, Vady, Nola, Mali at this moment in time. And of course, this is going to be a very difficult race for these drivers as well. It's a very tough one. They've got to make one mandatory pit stop over the course of the racing action on top of that. And so every driver is going to be just keeping themselves in mind that they still have a long way to go and that qualifying isn't necessarily here, Kieran, everything.
As Jack Nola goes third fastest then in the Porsche, the number 36 car, and it's quite interesting really. You know, you've got the top five separated by 1 second, but second to fifth place are separated by 0.3 of a second, just over. That's how big the gap is between the Luke Whitehead and the rest of the field. He's just on another level today.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and he is really flying. There is Nola, who has moved up, of course, into that third position we did just mention. But someone else who's having a really good qualifying right now is in 7th position right now, because Leaf up there, Alex Leaf there, has done really, really well. He's 1.2 seconds off the pace right now, and that yellow and blue Porsche, I tell you what, even if it's raining buckets and cats and dogs and all the rest of the idiosyncrasies that we can put in, he is absolutely flying out there, and you definitely won't miss him as Pokey has moved up into P6 in the Aston Martin.
Yeah, and Alex Leaf's finishing 12th place last time around at Spa-Francorchamps, so currently 8th fastest in this qualifying session. It's good progress then from the TPC sim racing driver as he negotiates his way through Hislop's. Tiptoeing would probably be the better word as he finds his way through Knickerbrook and back on the power. Taking a little bit of curb there, braver than me for sure, as he makes his way up through Clay Hill. Not where I would put the power down, especially in a rear-wheel drive car, through the water tower and on towards Druid's Corner. This dangerous right-hander, and it's caught out. Alex Leaf gets onto the grass, and it's just simply, once you get onto the grass in these conditions, there is absolutely next to no grip. In fact, I'd go as far and say there's absolutely zero grip.
I'll tell you what, it's getting interesting now. The gaps are coming down. Kesey is now matched by Vady for time to the very 1,000th of a second. Jack Noller's just got into P2 as we go on board then from the driver's eye perspective of Tinko van der Velde. You can see they've got that small camera on the back of the car, which means they can have a little picture of where they are battling behind. It functions a little bit better than a rear view mirror, which of course they still do have in terms of the analog way to go and look behind and see how people are doing. Little bit of correction on that curve on the outside then from Tinko van der Velde as on the brakes into the final corner of Lodge. You have to be so patient through here, especially as you descend down the hill. It's very easy to spin the rears up in damp to wet conditions as we are in right now, and that charge over the line is good enough to put Tinko van der Velde then up into that 5th place for the moment. Simon Speth then jumps up in the TPC sim racing car there to 8th place, and there is the Alpine of Oscar Saristo out there currently in P13.
Yes, making his way now on through the last couple of corners. He's negotiated his way through Druid's Corner, and he's got Harry Spears right behind him in that pink 285 car. Saristo then making his way back onto the power, out of Lodge Corner, through Deer Leap, over the top and towards the start-finish line. Where will Saristo put himself? He's 13th fastest. He did go quicker, but it was not a valid lap. He's got really time for 2 more laps. I wonder if he's got the fuel on board to do that.
Well, that will be something very much keeping in the back of the mind. 2 laps. This is a long lap in these wet conditions. 146s we are seeing as we look at Sheldon Muscat there in the AMG Mercedes, 12th place at this moment for GT Omega RPM Esports. So a lot of work still to be done, you would say, at this moment in time to find that shade of improvement, but there is still those gaps starting to form. He's got 4 tenths to find right now to Sheldon if he wants to move past Soanes as the best of the AMG Mercedes.
Yes, and that will be a little bit of battle between the two of them then, who will be the faster Mercedes in this field. We've only got 1 Ginetta, 1 Alpine, and I believe 1 KTM as well. So there comes the fastest drivers in those constructors and those manufacturers for sure. As for the rest of the order, who knows? Here comes then Sheldon Muscat making his way over that top of Water Tower and on towards Druid's Corner, and it's just, you can't keep that steering wheel straight going through Water Tower. There's no possible way you can keep that wheel straight, as it's always turning, twisting and turning as you try and negotiate your way through. Now on towards Lodge Corner then. Brakes are on then for this last braking zone of the track. Then back onto the power, plenty of undulation on the exit, which promotes the rear wheels to start spinning up. Keep it under control, boot it hard towards the line. Sheldon Muscat goes up to 5th fastest, finding almost a second on that lap alone.
What a wonderful bit of work then done, as he was tied at the time from Jan-Nicholas Erbrick. There is Tahamali looking to really gear up through the final corner. This looks like it's an attempt to start a final flying lap. Whitehead will not improve on lap time either as they cross here. O'Malley crosses with 10 seconds to go. 47.5 was gearing up for one final attempt around this place, and he has been completely stymied over the course of this qualifying so far. Checkered flag then is out in session. Vela will not improve on 19th place. Is 8 seconds adrift. Kesey comes to the line then and goes in 3rd. Nola couldn't improve either in second. So is it now just starting to get a little bit damper than it was? We're 10 minutes away from some really heavy rain, and you can see how much Tahamali's pushing there, going through the island bend, trying to get it stopped into the Shell Oil's corner, because that was all about keeping yourself on the road. And I think that little lift is going to cost him any hopes of time, unless he has a wonderful middle to final sector out of the Britain chicane as they go through. Home in 10th. Leaf is now down to 11th position at this stage, but the charge continues out there on track through the rights and the lefts, just in front of Tahamali. You can see someone's gone straight on through there, down at the Hislop chicane over towards Knickerbrook. You can see right now it is Spears just in front, who is 16th, and that might just be a little bit of help here for Tahamali if he can get himself closing in through the final sections. Look at the track, it says it's now wet, so these times are going to get even tougher and even tougher as they go through. There's a lot more standing water around this place. You're going to see that spray kick up a little bit more as they go through on the brakes, and now you can see Vadi's going to make a drive for the line. Will that be an improvement? Oh, it is in these conditions. Vadi goes to 30, pips out Hamada Akizi going through. Saristo in 11th, and Spears then crossing the line will remain then in P15. So that will bring everything to a close then for qualifying. But Kieran, my word, that was all about set time early. What a statement by Luke Whitehead.
He's certainly in control. That would be a bit of an understatement. And qualifying is, I always say, a quarter of the story. We've got an hour-long race with a mandatory pit stop, but going by that pace alone for Luke Whitehead, he's looking like he's going to be in a league of his own tonight. Tahamali, we saw him there on that lap. He got onto the grass through the island bend. He pushed it too hard. He lost the back in there. Did very well to keep it under wraps, but that just showed you, Jake, as you rightfully said, that track got a lot of standing water towards the end, and we saw the KTM getting an improvement, going even faster in those tricky conditions. So it just goes to show that sometimes, even if the track gets worse around you, if the water stays away from the racing line and you're on the right tyres, then that could mean the world of difference between setting that really good lap time and maybe just falling short.
It very much does, and we see it time and time again. How many times does it always get itself moving forward? How many times have you seen drivers excel when it comes to wet weather conditions? It takes a different style of driving, you would say, Kieran, to maybe go out there and usurp a little bit of pace, and something that we saw Tahamali, championship leader, really struggle with over the course of qualifying.
Yeah, sometimes there you might just have a car that might just not like these wet weather conditions. In theory, the drivers should have to stick with these cars throughout the entire series here. So there will be cars that don't like the wet weather conditions. There might be cars that don't like Oulton Park. And if you're unlucky enough for a car to not like Oulton Park and not like wet weather conditions, you're in a world of trouble.
You certainly are. And of course, here with World Pro Racing, wherever you may be watching us right now, this AMD GT4 series is not just a shiny name in terms of this championship. There are reasons why we race, and of course, Kieran, they race for prizes.
They do indeed, and some lovely prizes on the line, courtesy of our title sponsor in AMD. Yes, some fantastic prizes for the top 3 and some goodie bags for the rest of the top 6. So it really is something on the line for these drivers. They know they want those prizes, and they're very nice prizes too.
They certainly are, and of course we'll be seeing those gathered up at the end of the season when all of the racing is said and done. But you know, tonight is just one of those nights for those. Today is one of those days, and we'll be seeing who can put an hour in on the board. And, you know, you've got such a technical track with a lot of corners on it, Kieran. This is normally, even in dry conditions, concentration. But how much more mental fortitude will we need as we take a little look at the drivers then going to the grid? We've got about 15 seconds before they get going. Just how much concentration are they going to need?
They're going to need a ton of it, even more so in the dry. There's obviously not many opportunities to practice rolling starts, let alone in these wet weather conditions. So keep your concentration. There's going to be a lot of spray off the start. Make sure you find your braking point. Keep yourself out of trouble as you head way in towards Old Hall Corner. It's a very high speed corner, but it's very high risk. Keep your nose clean. You've got a good chance of a good result.
High risk, high reward then as we see the drivers making their way then towards the Old Hall Corner. And, sorry, not the Old Hall corner. Well, they will be getting there eventually, but through the Lodge corner, first and foremost, to get themselves through. Up and down the hill, they will be at the behest, so to speak, then, of Luke Whitehead on the inside. Nola alongside. Watch out for this hour. This is going to be a tough hour's worth of battling. The rain is absolutely pouring down, and we are getting ourselves ready and going here. Gene Velo will get a drive-through penalty for speeding off of the start then of this race. Disaster at the back, but Whitehead unchallenged going to the opening corner. A bit of too wide already, as I believe Van der Velde will be looking for a way through. Hamida Kesey as well in the mix as well as they head down the hill into the Cascades for the first time. Look at Van der Velde's start. He's already up there and searching for places. He looks to try and pick that one off, and he has done.
Oh, they've got a car off in the background. One of the Mercedes is off in the background. I think that's Jordan Soames in the background, who finds himself onto the grass. Does well to get it back onto the track, but he's lost a lot of time. Luke Whitehead getting a fantastic start, perfectly planting that throttle pedal, getting pretty much no wheel spin whatsoever. Does a really good start then, and already starting to pull away. The gap's nearly a second already, and we haven't even got to the halfway stage in this lap. And there's the Baby McLaren Racing Team car of Samir Foch. He's currently in 19th place. He's got Dean Veller ahead of him, but Dean Veller has a drive-through penalty, as Marley then down in 6th place at the moment as he tries to fight his way back through the field. There you can see the Ginetta trying to sneak a move up the inside, maybe having a look up the inside of Thibaut Polke then. So you can see Marley has lost a position off the start. The Aston Martin almost being a bit of a boat going through in towards Knickerbrook then. Looked really hard to get under control, and Daniel Veller there in the Godaria Racing BMW, as you said, Jake, has that drive-through penalty. He'll have to serve that within the next 3 laps.
He certainly will, and it looks like Saristo dropping well down the order as well, back to 17th. Hasn't had the best middle sector, but at least for the moment, Luke Whitehead in total command at the front of this field. Already has 1.4 seconds to the good, but Jack Nolla will be the one looking behind more rather than in front. So we take an eye at Jan-Nicholas Erbrich there in 12th position. You can see those contrasting lines, and into the pits then will come Maximilian Vady then in the KTM. So a lap 1 decision to stop. It's crucial to work to say this right now. That is not inside the pit window. They need to make 1 stop within the pit window over the course of the action they've got. This is an additional stop for Vady right now as he finds himself in the lane.
Yeah, Daniel Veller also coming down the pit lane to serve his drive-through penalty, so that will be out of the way at the very least. He'll have some clear air to put in some lap times of his own, but that's not what he wanted to do at this stage. As Marley now gets ahead of Muscat, and also Polke as well, he's found himself ahead of as well. He's got Van der Velde now ahead. That'll be a battle for 4th place, but Luke Whitehead already 1.5 laps into this race, 1.5 second lead he's got. Hamada Akizi riding on board with him as he's got Tinko Van der Velde in every single rear view mirror he's got. He's got to try and keep his concentration here. He can't let Jack Nolla get too far away. As you can see, weaving left and right. I think he knows we're watching him here.
I think he does as well, trying to maybe break a bit of toe. Very dangerous to do that in wet weather conditions as well, as there goes the tyre bundle. It's a big hit as it goes on through, so they won't be dealing with that too much longer out there. There is Simon Speth looking to try and get a really good run, but he's out on the curb, and that's an issue. That's why he grabbed grass. Vady back out there and racing again. So it looks like whatever happened there is all fixed. Maybe only put qualifying fuel in the car to push forward. But at least for the moment, Hamida Akizi is the one looking behind in the defence. And what a great start it was for Tinko Van der Velde moving up to 4th, Mali up to 5th, and Muscat just behind there in 6th position. They're all figuring out these wet weather conditions, especially in the early goings of this one. The rain is not going to stop anytime soon.
Well, you say that, it won't stop anytime soon, but it's meant to ease off in the next 10 minutes. So there will still be rain, but it's meant to lighten up. That doesn't mean that the rain's going anywhere, of course, as you rightfully said, as there's a lot of standing water out onto the track right now. Luke Whitehead leading by just over 2 seconds in this race, and we're not even 5 minutes into this race, as Luke Whitehead is making this look easy. He's on a Sunday drive at the moment as he makes his way towards Shell Oil's corner.
It's amazing that he's on a Sunday drive, seeing as today is Thursday at the moment, as Hamida Akizi defends himself through the Shell Oil's corner. And this is where it gets a little bit dicey out there on track. They have that run to Britain's, of course, which can be a place where if you're brave, you can make something happen, but not at least for the moment. It's all about setup around this place. And the Aston Martin will be looking behind at that Ginetta, which feels very, very hungry to get through into that next place as they descend from the hilltop over towards Hislops here. This next chicane, you can just see how much more tentative that Aston Martin is. It's almost sailing like a cruiser at this stage, where you've got maybe a little bit more of, I would say, more of a sailboat style that you've got at this moment in time from the Ginetta.
Yeah, Sheldon Muscat sailing across the grass in the background there, just missing his sort of apex. It didn't cost him too much time there, but he'll have to be careful not doing that too much. You'll push your luck with those grass and it will bite back. So he'll just have to keep it on the island if he can. Okezi still ahead of Tinko van der Velde as they now make their way through Lodge Corner, but he runs a little deep, and this is going to be an invitation for Tinko van der Velde. He'll think not twice about that one, going around the outside in towards the start finish straight.
Van der Velde through, Mali through up into 4th position, and everything exactly as it needed to be as they pushed on through. A lot of work being done as they go through, as PMX, you can see back there in the Ninko Racing, Aston Martin is in 17th place and figuring out how to stay with Samir Foch. They're in 16th overall. There are gaps that are appearing out there on track, and it's looking very, very aggressive in the mid-pack. If you've been on the highway or you've been on the motorway at night when it's raining or when it's been very dark and dingy, this is how it feels. A little bit in the grass there goes Kesey. It's very, very tough, and it's very easy in those conditions to get tunnel vision.
Yes, definitely. And you'll find that it is very, very hard to make sure that you keep onto that line every single lap. We saw it with Hamada Okezi just running slightly too deep going in towards the final braking zone of Lodge Corner, and it just meant that it lost him that precious time, and then he tries to fight back against Tinko van der Velde, just try and get that move done. And fair play to him, round the outside of Cascades. Not many people have managed to get that off in the dry, let alone in these wet weather conditions, but sadly just took a little bit too much speed into the corner, ran onto the grass, and it just handed that 4th place over to Taha Mali, who sailed on by.
Yep, Taha Mali did a wonderful job to make it happen. There is Alex Leaf, though, in the TPC Sim Racing machine. He is really looking behind Jan Nicholas Erbrick, who wants to get the McLaren through, really tried to push it through Cascade and onto the lakeside back straight here as they go on through a nice lake there over on the right-hand side of your screen. Left-hand side for the drivers obscured by trees, but they go through at the island bend. There is the lake, and as they look to try and make that push and go on through, this is a tough section, but if you grab grass on the entry like Jan Nicholas Erbrick just did there, you are going straight on in the braking zone just like he did.
Yeah, you'll see then. He had the anchors on, but the grass is so wet out there, the brakes just do nothing. They'll just lock the wheel, lock the tyres, stop them from spinning, and it just makes you slide off of the circuit, and it's not ideal whatsoever. That's where cadence braking has to come in. You can't rely on the ABS there alone to get you out of that situation. Flashing of the lights then from the BMW of Michael Mercieka as he tries to defend against Harry Spears. I think actually he's got the move on Harry Spears, because he was 12th place, was that bright pink Aston Martin. We see another car having to take to the escape road going through Hislops then. Wasn't quite sure which it was. I saw that out of the corner of my eye. Meanwhile then, Soanes is right and having to defend hard from Michael Mercieka. You can see now that rear view mirror of the Mercedes will be full of the BMW behind.
It certainly is, and you are really seeing it right now, just how tough of a battle they are finding themselves in on the brakes then into Lodge Corner on what is their 5th lap that they have managed to get themselves through, and you can see just how much they are willing to push, and you can also see how much of a line is being determined here. All these drivers, all 19 of them, or 18 now with PMX down in the pits, they are creating a line out there on circuit, which is giving them all of the reasoning to stay on it because they have to deal with less standing water, and they will continue to take that water off every time they go through. And that's going to be worth keeping in mind as the track maybe does dry up a little bit later on in this race, depending on the conditions. They're going to be looking at how much is that track going to be drying up, and how much risk do you take on making a move going to that wetter line. As you can see, Spears thinking the inside, and oh, hello, just behind there. That was very nearly a little look for the move.
Yeah, that was Saristo, I think, almost ran into the back. He might have just given Harry Spears a little bit of a love tap going in towards Shell Oil's corner. If it wasn't love tap, it was very close to being one. As you can see, the drivers attack the Britain's hair chicane, then on we go through Hilltop. But Saristo is just filling that Aston Martin's mirrors then as they now descend towards Hislops. And one thing about this circuit, we've already seen it there. Oh, that's the McLaren there of Jan-Nicolas Erbrich. He's struggling out there. Once again, he has to take to that escape road. And because you take that escape road, because the styrofoam isn't there anymore, you have to slow down. Normally, you'd have to go around it, but already someone's been through it.
Yeah, and that was Jan-Nicolas Erbrich last lap. So really not having fun at that section of track. And you really have to temper your braking zone as you go down the hill in towards Hislop chicane, because of the fact here, Kieran, as you go on down into that section, gravity works against you, and of course when gravity works against you, you know that gravity is working against rain as well, and that it's also flowing down. It's like being on a water slide.
Is indeed, and of course with the wet weather you'll have increased braking distances, so everything is literally against you as you go in towards that braking zone. Riding on board then with Harry Spears in the Sidemax Motorworks car on the back of Mikhail Mercheka, the number 27 car ahead, as they now make their way through in towards Denton's, now down the hill in through Cascade. And you'll see two slightly different lines being taken there. Can Harry Spears try and take advantage of this one? Well, he had a BMW parked right where he wanted to accelerate, right when he wanted to put the power down, and Mercheka will start to build a gap here because he, in theory, was earlier on the power. Now making our way through Island Bend and in towards Shell Oil's corner, you can see the BMW defending the inside line. No way through for Harry Spears, and if you park your car in the right places here, it is very, very difficult to pass. Then you can see Saristo right in the rear view TV screen, if you like, right on the back of that Aston Martin.
And there you can see as well behind, Erbrich will want into this one as well. Good drive up the hill though from Saristo, and making that descent down the hill is going to be a very tough battle to take. And ultimately, they're going to come together as they go through. Once again, you can see it was an exit stage right for Erbrich. Third time in 3 laps he's made that same ascent over to the right-hand side, to the left-hand side, sorry, as he went on through. But now you're starting to see how these drivers are getting a little bit caught up and bogged down behind each other right now. This is a tough track to overtake even in the dry. In the wet, it gets even tougher.
Yeah, you can see that. I think actually Jan-Nicolas Erbrich, after all of that, third time's the charm. He got the braking zone right, but where Harry Spears and Saristo actually started to bunch up going into the entrance of Hislops, then he had to take to the escape road in avoidance. So he got the braking zone right. Unfortunately, there were 2 cars ahead of him battling away for position, and he had to just exit stage right.
Certainly did, and that would have been something worth keeping in mind as he takes the big wide line through the opening corner, taking all of the wet road along with him for it as well. There is your race leader, by the way. Luke Whitehead has now opened up to a 5-second margin at the front over Jack Noller, 15 minutes into this race, and really nothing to argue about in terms of the way that he has been driving at the moment. It's been quiet, it's just been consistently quick, and there's nothing that anybody in this field really can argue about right now. He's just quietly getting on with business, and business will be concluded in about 46 minutes, as Luke Whitehead tends to do.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. And of course, the pit window opening in about 11 minutes' time. And it will be interesting to see how the weather responds in those 11 minutes. It is meant to get, the rain is meant to ease up more and more over the next 10 minutes, but it is still meant to rain. So that tells me the drivers will not want to really change their tyres. as they will make their way through now. Mercheka still, we ride on board with him, looking over the back of his rear wing. Harry Spears, Sari Stowe, and there you can see Jan-Niklas Erbrich in this 4-car train for this battle for 12th place. Remember, the points standings go all the way down to 25 places, so if you can find yourself in a good stead here, even if you don't have the greatest race in the world, get to the checker flag, because there's a high chance you'll get some points on the board, and with the top 6 walking away with some sort of prize, you'd be mad not to try and finish the race.
You would be mad. Of course, there are a whole heap of points available, and especially in these conditions, it takes one mistake to end a race, and that is something that you don't often get to talk about in comparison to dry to wet, and it is the level of mistake you have to make. Normally, it is a catastrophic one which ends your race in the dry. Here in the wet, it could be just one minor mistake. You break 5 minutes later, and almost proving my point there on cue was Oscar Saristo, as he went all shades of sideways going through. Now, Speth is someone definitely to keep in mind in this race. He's past Polke, up into 7th, and now eyes on Muscat here in 6th.
Yeah, as they made their way through the Shell Oils corner, he fancied a move then on the exit of Cascades, but he couldn't quite make it stick then. Sheldon Muscat wise to that move, but Simon Spett then in the TPC Sim Racing number 10 car, just letting Sheldon Muscat know he's there in that battle for 6th place. Whilst they do that, Teemu Polke is slowly closing in, just over a second away from this battle for 6th place.
Yep, just closing in there. You can see just in front as well, Tahamali and Tinko van der Velde also keeping their eyes very accustomed to each other at this stage. They charge through Knickerbrook corner, this very, very difficult right in the rain, as you always try and put the power down on the exit. There is van der Velde holding on to the podium as things stand, and now we'll be thinking about, okay, we're in a real race. I can't afford to put the car in the wrong position, because I'll just open the door up. A little bit wide there behind went Hamada Urquiza, who's desperately trying to stay with these drivers at this stage. But look at how nimble and aggressive the lines that Tahamali is taking right now. He wants to put Tinko van der Velde under as much pressure as possible.
Doesn't he just? And he knows here that he's already seen from the likes of Hamada Urquiza that if you do put the driver under pressure up ahead, there's a chance they'll make a mistake, and then there'll be this chance that you can sail on by and take a free position. But at the moment then, Van der Velde is in no mood to make any mistakes. Saristo, on the other hand, is on the charge then as they head towards the first braking zone at Old Hall corner, but no way through then. It's a long right-hander and then gets tighter as it goes through a tightening corner on the exit then, and there's just no way he could have found his way past. Jan-Niklas Erbrich then still trying to find his way through, still got the best seat in the house for this battle for 12th place.
Might be the best seat in the house, but there's no point calling it the best seat in the house if you can't see a way through any other drivers. So still the patience play going to be there, and it might just be a case when you look at the strategy that they go for a call to come in early or come in later. The one thing that they'll have definitely in the back of their mind is that they've got big chunky wet weather tyres on at this stage. What that means is that they've got a lot of tread for getting rid of water out there on circuit, and it is going to dry up in 10 minutes. We're going to move from heavy rain to light rain, and 1, 2, 3 all in trouble. Mersheka's I believe going to avoid all of them, as is Samir Foch avoiding action through the grass. But there at Britain's, how easily it all goes wrong, and it looks like Spears might be calling it a day.
Yeah, they definitely speared off the track there, didn't they? But Sari Stowe and Harry Spears caught up in that instant, and Jan-Niklas Erbrich having to do the same as Sari Stowe goes straight on. I think he's going to come straight back to the pit lane then, and Tahamali is now seeing the back, or at least the front, of Hamada Urquiza at the back of his car. He's had to turn his attention pretty quickly from attacking Tinko van der Velde to having to defend from Hamada Urquiza. If he leaves the door open like that, you'll see Urquiza will want to try and take that move then. In we go then through the first corner at Old Hall corner. Both cars lighting up the rear tyres on the exit of the very first corner, down in towards the avenue, through Denton's, and now in towards this long left-hander of Cascades. And the pit stops here, a mandatory tyre change is required. So you will probably see the drivers go onto another set of these wet weather tyres, because the rain is going to stick around for the foreseeable.
It is for the foreseeable future at least, but they also have to be really careful on the outside of these corners, because the surface that you've got over the curb is one thing. You practice curb on the wet. What you don't necessarily practice in the wet is the surface that comes along after it that you saw at turn 1, which is effectively the same sort of surface that you have there, Kieran, as you would say on an artificial ski slope.
Yeah, about the same levels of grip, that is for sure. You're not wrong there, Jake, and I wouldn't like to drive in a condition that reminds me of an indoor ski place, that's for sure. Taha Mali, though, still in 4th place, as he can't seem to find a way past Tinko van der Velde, and whilst this battle goes on, they fall further and further behind the likes of Jack Noller and of Luke Whitehead. The more they battle, the more time they lose. Sheldon Muscat also in his rearview mirrors has Simon Spett and Thibaut Polke battling away for that position for 6th place. So there's a good amount of battling going on wherever you see up and down the field. It's just a shame that we were robbed of one of them between Harry Spears and Oscar Saristo there. But I have to say, though, it's been some good racing so far.
It has really been some good racing, and we have seen that as they go through. Now there'll be some questions about what they do for tyre choice as they go through, and at what point do they try and get things done. So we're just getting a little bit of confirmation in from the stewards. The 9 and the 285 coming together out there on track. Of course, that would have been Spears and Saristo, and it will be a drive-through penalty for Oscar Saristo for causing an avoidable incident. Adrian Fagayo and George Muscat, both FIA accredited stewards out here today and working hard as always behind the scenes. But Saristo is going to take a little Mr. Naughty trip going through. We'll catch this on the replay. This is the incident and how it came along. It came out of relatively nowhere, and this is a really tough moment because you can see there Spears gets out of shape through their Britons, and you're committed to that line if you're Saristo, and he's got nowhere to go on what is a car and a half, 2 cars at best on the exit.
Yeah, but the stewards will be having a look at that, and there is the ruling that if you are the car following, it's your responsibility to make sure you get out of it. And unfortunately there, if it's just a little bit of a slow reaction time, that's all the difference that makes. And for Saristo, then that drive-through penalty has been awarded by our stewards, and it was handled pretty quickly by the stewarding team as well. So you can clearly feel and you can clearly see how they felt about that one. Sheldon Muscat, though, 6th place right now, but he's been all over the curbs and all over the grass goes Simon Spett then as he tries to push hard to close in on that Mercedes ahead of him. As you see there, Polke also just sort of staying back for now. He's looming in the distance, knows that these two are pushing hard as we've got 2 drivers going side by side, and one of them's the Ginetta of Taha Mali there.
It looks like they've both gone off, and suddenly they're weaving to get through. Mali trying to go defensive is going to be a big blockade in the middle. They're 3 minutes away from the pit window opening, and Muscat here is going to go to the outside trying to pick this one off. You've got Speth trying to get in the mix as well, just lifting out of it, heading to Old Hall Corner, but that is getting out in the wet part of the circuit there. Muscat's done very well to avoid the tyres, but now all of a sudden it becomes Speth's turn to move up for 4th position. Can he get a look on the inside? He can't. Kesey is going to try and make a lunge down the inside. Just enough room being given between those two. Take a look over left. There you can see Kesey having to lift off then as they go in towards the island section of track. And there's a tap to the back. Good save going through by Speck, who's really now being put under the hammer, so to speak.
Yeah, and yeah, you could see there Marty and Kesey tripped over each other in the final section through Druid's corner, I think there was, on the exit of that corner. It just allowed everybody else from 6th downwards to close in. Marley managed to recover. Spett misses that chicane, gets a little bit of a tap then from Kesey, who wants to try and find that move back past as we now head over the hilltop and now towards Hislops and Knickerbrook. Not really an overtaking opportunity here, but we've been proven wrong before, and I'll gladly be proven wrong again. That suspension working hard at the first part of Hislops, then through Knickerbrook, then as they get back onto the power, that back end sliding around to just try and find some grip out there. So you can see Hamada Akezi more confident in these corners than Simon Spett, and it seems to be catching Akezi off a bit. We've already seen him make contact once with the back of that Porsche.
I wonder as well, with pit stop strategy, if later is better than easier, because they would have scrubbed down some of the tread in the tyres, and the rain is to ease in about 3 minutes time according to the weather forecast right now. So through they go. You can see Speth really struggling there to get the car pointed through the corner, and that is going to bring that time away just a little bit more. They've got 1:25, which means next lap that pit window is going to be open and drivers have a 10-minute interval to get themselves in to make their one mandatory stop in this race. And you can see here from the drivers behind that they are all very desperate to get behind or get past Speth and Mali then in 4th and 5th position. The one thing that we didn't really see was how that all got started here between Mallet and Akizi, because it was looking more rather that it was Mallet attacking Van der Velde.
Yeah, absolutely. As Akizi finds himself now on the cosh, and now he's got Teemu Pulkki right behind him as they make their way through Shell Oil's corner. Got to make sure he gets the power down, and we've already seen here Teemu Pulkki is just going to wait, and in the shadows he will wait. He'll wait for as long as possible to see if a move will happen for him that he can just take advantage of it. But Sheldon Muscat then, we saw him about a lap ago run wide on the exit of Old Hall corner onto the grass. There's just absolutely no grip. He glanced the tyre barrier there. Very, very lucky to get away with no real damage there and no real time lost. He's now down into 9th place, but he's right back onto the back of Jimmy Holm in the 777 homing missile.
He has run wide, though, coming out then of Knickerbrook corner. And as they take the crest up the clay hill towards the water tower, it is once again a case of looking behind than it is more rather in front. Pit window is now open. Luke Whitehead is your race leader at this stage, with Jack Noller second and Tinko van der Velde then in 3rd place at this stage. They're going through this very long right then at the lodge corner. Again, Akizi just pushing a little bit wide, and Akizi taking this time to get down into the pits as soon as possible. It's going to be followed in by Muscat.
Yeah, very, very awkward pit entry as well, as you're trying to turn and slow the car down to 50 kilometers per hour. So Akizi then is the first person into the pit lane, and to serve that mandatory stop, a mandatory tyre change is required. And in these tricky conditions, still the wet weather tyres are going to be put on. There's still a lot of water out there on track. Alex Leaf then, that's going to put him up into 9th place as he tries to chase down Jordan Soames for what now will be 8th place in this race. So it begs the question then, do you pit early or do you pit later? Because the rain is easing, and it's going to ease over the next 10 minutes. Do you get out there and just try and, you make use of these tyres whilst you still can? Or do you pit early, get some fresh tyres and make use of the water that's remaining out on track?
Well, I think this is only going to get easier and easier as they go. Do you want to challenge this with fresh wets and have a wet tyre that's going to fall away? Or are you going to be in a position where you want to have scrubbed wet tyres, which will be a little bit easier when it comes to drier conditions like a damper track would be? Of course, we know it's still raining. It's going to take a while for that track to fall away from wet conditions to damp conditions, but it is worth noting that rain is going to ease up more and more in the next 3 to 10 minutes or so. So it's always going to be a case of trying to find out how much do you have available to you, how difficult is it going to be, what are the track conditions doing, and you don't often have that. So now Jack Noller's got the lead and Whitehead is back there in 2nd position. So yeah. I wonder what's happened here to Luke, and we'll probably have to catch it on replay here because he's lost the race lead.
He has, and he's a long way back now, 4.6. He did have an 8.5-second lead, and he hasn't been to the pits at all. So what has happened to Luke Whitehead? He's now making his way through Cascades, but so your new leader now is Jack Noller. There he goes in the Porsche, making his way through in towards Island Bend, on towards Shell Oil's corner. Luke Whitehead in 2nd place, Tinko van der Velde in 3rd. Now, if Luke Whitehead has been off the track, has he made contact with a wall? If he has, how much damage is there to that car?
He is really struggling to put anything down on track, and I think he is walking wounded towards the pits. You can see he's not very comfortable out there at the moment. The gap has been increasing. Mali then is down in the pits as we speak, so is making his stop. We'll get out and away. The virtual crew is doing a very good job out there at the moment. It's quite funny. They all look the same, actually, as they go on through. And there is Mali getting back out then onto circuit and will rejoin the race in 14th position, which is key because that puts him ahead of Muscat, but behind Urquizy. So maybe not the best decision-making in the world out there. We will have to wait and see whether we can get a replay of what happened to Luke Whitehead or not. But Jack Noller, your race leader as things stands.
Yeah, there's a bit of a mystery in the air about what happened to Luke Whitehead. We'll see if we can find out what happened. In the meantime, though, here comes Jack Noller into the pit lane, then slowing it right down to 50 kilometers per hour. Right, leave it as late as you possibly can. Luke Whitehead stays out then. and so we'll try and take advantage of the clean air before his pit stop, and he's got a lot of it as well. Tinko van der Velde also staying out with just over 6 minutes of the pit window left open then, and it looks like Jack Noller, the only driver in the pit lane right now, as loads of cars file their way through. We're looking then, the 302 of Alex Leaf then, finding his way through over the start-finish line. He's got past Jordan Soames actually, so he's made another position, but yeah, Luke Whitehead leading the way. But the mystery remains, what happened to him and how much is this going to cost him? You can see all that front end is all sorts of scratched up.
It is, and that will be what he's keeping an eye out on, a little bit of a wider line taken as he goes through. Of course, Luke Whitehead gets a lot of help from the old man, so to speak, his father, and then he's got his coaches at work as well. Now, we'll catch this on replay here. This is what happened to Whitehead. Oh, this is a huge off going through the island corner, and he's lucky, I think, that he hasn't actually hit anything, so he's taking a little bit of time to get through. Oh, no, there was the hit. He just grabbed the barrier as he was trying to turn the car around, and that would be why there are scratchings on the front, and why maybe the front of that machine isn't handling so hot at this moment in time. And it's worth keeping an eye out on there as we are halfway through this race. We've got 30 minutes now and under left to go here at Oulton Park. It might be one of the reasons why he's struggling a little bit as we take a look at Hamida Akizi well off the road and dropping 2 places.
Yeah, absolutely. Akizi now down into 15th place as he looks to try and recover what he can. Sheldon Muscat right ahead of him, Taha Mali in 13th place. And this comes down to the strategy as well. It's all well and good coming into the pits early, but if you rejoin in traffic, you're going to lose a lot of time. Luke Whitehead into the pit lane. Oh, and
look at this. 10 minutes time. Rain is looking like it is going to stop out there on circuit. So with about 20 minutes to go, there's going to be no rain, and it might just be a case in the final maybe 10, 15, maybe in the last 5 minutes, who gambles going on to dries.
I do wonder if that's going to be the case. It just depends on how quickly the track dries up, as we see in the background there. I think that's one of the Mercedes, was it, in the background? No, it was whoever was battling with Spet then, so it was Polke in the background, nearly getting onto the grass then as he tries to find his way past. But that does hand the lead of this race to Tinko van der Velde, but you can see that orange 1 next to his name means he's still yet to make his mandatory stop, and he will be trying to just stop as late in this race as possible. Simon Spet then in the TPC Sim racing car has got Polke right behind. There's Jimmy Holm in 4th place, Alex Leaf following behind in 5th place, 10.9 behind. That's the KTM of Maximilian Vedi right behind them. He has made his stop, so he'll just be just trying to make sure he catches up, maybe using that little bit of slipstream there from Jimmy Holm ahead to gain some time and maybe gain some positions later on in this race. Spet, though, has got his rear view mirrors full. No matter where he looks, he's going to see Thibaut Polke right behind. Yep. It's going to be, well, it's either going to be this lap or next lap.
Yeah, that definitely is the case. I want to also keep an eye on Jack Noller here in this one, because he's caught up to the back of Jan-Nicolas Erbrich, and it's imperative he gets through as soon as possible, gets a good run up the hill in that Porsche in comparison to the McLaren. He's got to make the move on track, and he can't. And you're going to see that behind is Whitehead, and he has closed that gap. It was 4 seconds at the last sector, and over the last lap, you're going to see it's going to be a little bit less when they go through from 4 seconds to what it's going to be now. As you can see, chasing up the clay hill towards the water tower, that gap is down 1.2 seconds in one sector alone. Look how much it's costing Jack Noller.
And you can see Jack Noller flashing the lights at Jan-Nicolas Erbrich. Erbrich has got no hesitation. He doesn't have to let this car through. That's battling for position. This BMW of Vela has to let them through, though. He's getting blue flagged all the way through, and we'll see now the McLaren. Oh, he gets cut off there by the BMW then. Very nice from Erbrich to avoid that one, but you can see Jack Noller flashing the lights. He doesn't have to give you that position, Jack.
He doesn't, but he's got to force a mistake now if he wants to get through. Good run then through the old hall, and you can see there, Vela getting out of the way. You can see he's trying every which way. He's going for gaps that don't exist at this point as he descends into the cascade, trying to search for a margin. And you talk about striking distances and how quick you were. I was listening to the Formula 1 the other day, and it was a case at Monaco, you've got to be 2 seconds a lap quicker than the car in front to make a meaningful overtake. Feels something very similar right now for Jack Noller, who's looking for a way to the inside here. And again, it's covered off.
It is covered off, so you can see Erbrick here is defending. He doesn't want to let this position fly at any rate whatsoever as we make our way now through in towards Britain's chicane, then attacking that first curb in towards the second one. And there you can see how much confidence Jack Noller has going through the third part of the chicane there. Confidence in the grip of this car. He's loving it right now. What he's not loving is Jan-Niklas Erbrick up ahead of them, because that advantage he had as he exited the pit lane, 4 seconds. Now you can see Luke Whitehead is right behind. His only solace, though, is Jan-Niklas Erbrick has to pit in this lap. He has no other choice.
Yes, but this is also helping Tinko van der Velde, who stayed out as long as he possibly could in these conditions. Track has gone from wet to damp now as they make this push into the right. So this track's getting quicker and quicker as they go around. And crucially, can see there is that element of aggressiveness needed here. Noller's searching for the inside. He's also half defending at the same time, not allowing Whitehead the chance to strike and attack. And now up the hill, expect then to go right. They will follow as they try and go through, but they can see off to the right goes Erbrick. Now where will Van der Velde be in all of this? As he's made his stop, he is now trying to get himself out and going once again. He is behind these drivers right now, and we are very firmly out of pit window range, so it seems, at least for the moment, that they're okay. But you can see Jack Noller, he is very much on that aggressive factor at this stage, and they're off the road. That's Max Vady then in the 89, letting him go through. White flags are out for a mechanical, which says that you are slow out there on track, and that is a position being let go.
Yeah, I think he actually had a moment there coming through the left-hander of Cascades. Look at Luke Whitehead trying to launch down the outside at the very least, but trying to get as close to the Porsche as possible. Grab the popcorn. This is going to be an amazing fight for the lead.
It absolutely is, and they've got 8 seconds here to Van der Velde. A big block then from Noller. He used all of the road and all of the time available. Watch these drivers as the track dries out. They might start experimenting with a couple of different lines out there to search for a little bit of water to cool down the tyres, potentially, as they go through. You can see how much Luke Whitehead wants this, and there are battles up and down the order. You got Speth and Urquizy thinking about their positions as well, with Muscat as well in 5th place. So every battle starting to really form up here as they work out where do they need to be in order to get the results they want.
Track, though, has now gone to damp, so it is drying up out there. So as you said, Jake, sometime now the driver's going to have to be thinking about different lines, cooling down their tyres, and who is going to be braver. Where's that grip going to be? Who's going to be able to find that grip the quickest? Luke Whitehead still on the back of Jack Noller then as they make their way past the start-finish line just over 23 minutes ago in towards Old Hall Corner. You see Luke Whitehead taking a wider entrance through the first corner. In theory, gives him the better run and the better drive out of the corner. In through Denton's they will go, and then in towards the left-hander of Cascades, but no way through so far. Jack Noller doing well to defend. He's using this narrow track to his advantage. He
very much is, and the battle is 4th, 5th, 6th as well. Mali, Muscat and Urquizy all there as well. You can see here how Taha Mali is now really looking behind in the mirrors and seeing that Muscat definitely wants to get through and is searching through the Cascades, but hasn't found anything, at least as of yet, of relevance. These three have been going at it all race long as well at this moment in time, and this is very much a case of, well, 10 seconds down the road is Van der Velde. We're not going to catch him. We may as well fight amongst ourselves, the best of the rest in 4th.
You can see there Marley just taking a deeper line going through there. It's Jack Noller still holding on to the lead. Then Luke Whitehead thinking about a move going in towards his slops then, but it's a very tricky corner if you're not already running side by side to try and make a move there. Marley trying to hang on then. Muscat might find himself under pressure as the BMW, the lap down car, finds onto the grass to let the cars through. You can see Hamada Urquizy trying to find his way past the Mercedes, does a little bit of a switchback, then goes back to the racing line, desperate to try and find a way past Sheldon Muscat.
Desperation is very much the aim of the game for Hamada Urquizy. He's got to be a little bit more patient. You can see just how much the Mercedes bounces over that section of road just in front. Makes life very difficult and uncomfortable in the wheel, I'm sure, with the force feedback that's available. But now you can see a little bit of squirreliness from Hamada Urquizy. He's really trying to open up and prize apart that overtake, but he's just not able to find it, it seems.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Jack Noller, though, still leading the way now. In towards Cascades we go as the rain still falls here at Oulton Park. Luke Whitehead right behind him, though, as they now both charge out of Cascades through Lakeside towards the island bend through this long left-hander where you have to start slowing the car down. Now down in towards Shell Oil's corner, making sure you stay really well away from that grass on your inside. And Jack Noller defending the inside line, taking the apex to try and get himself a better line and a better drive out of Shell Oil's corner. And there's not a lot Luke Whitehead can do when Jack Noller is driving like this. He's doing a good defensive job at the moment. What he can't do is crack under the pressure.
Oh, and here comes a chance now on the outside. We know it's Porsche versus Audi here, a battle of the German manufacturers. He'll try around the outside to pick it up. He's thinking up and under. Has he gone too deep? He leads Porsche, leads Aston Martin, leads Ginetta.
Yeah, and you can see then Hamada Akizi now he's passed Sheldon Muscat. He's got to make sure he takes advantage of this now as he makes his way through in towards Deer Leap and now on towards Old Hall Corner. It's all kicking off here, that is for sure, with Jack Noller making that mistake and Sheldon Muscat. Well, we didn't quite see what happened between them, but what we know is that Hamada Akizi and Sheldon Muscat have swapped positions and their battling is allowing Tahamali to build just the slightest of gaps, and really that's all he needs. That's all you need to then start pushing on and building on that gap further.
But the rain has just stopped, so now it becomes a guessing game for everyone. At what point do you make the call to go to slicks, and who's got anything to lose? You'd say now with 5 seconds of margin, Jack Noller's got nothing to lose, and nor does Tinko van der Velde.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on it, that is for sure. Tinko van der Velde 4.6 behind Jack Noller. The question is how much damage is on Jack Noller's car. We know it took a knock from Luke Whitehead. How much damage does Luke Whitehead have on his Audi? Well, he's already had one fight with the wall there, a very small one. He's had a fight with Jack Noller, finds himself back into the lead of this race. Macieka, meanwhile, is now in a battle here for 13th place between himself and Oscar Saristo, then as Polke has dropped off the order. He's come back into the pit lane. Now, I wonder, Teemu Polke, has he just gone on to dry tyres?
That is a really important question. See whether that has been the catalyst. You might as well. But they can see Macieka holding off Saristo for the moment. Will be looking a little bit nervously in the mirrors now, heading through here at Britain's. Of course, this is where Saristo had a moment of his own, but wide's going to go Macieka. Saristo now is going to just about go through. It's like watching Big Brother versus Little Brother go and have their fight right now. Alpine versus that chonky BMW, and the BMW has to concede to Little Brother. That Alpine is through.
Yeah, and Saristo then was just absolutely on it. He was not willing to give up on that when he saw the gap. It may have been closing. Saristo didn't care though, and he's rewarded with 13th place.
Very much a nice reward going through. There is Tahamali in 4th place right now. Has Hamada Akizi absolutely bearing down fangs and all as he looks to try and chase down that 4th place and try and keep this one going. The two Ashtois teammates then going at it. All three Ashtois drivers in 3 different manufacturers, meaning they've got different chances to be successful in different races. But this was one which Tahamali was looking at, setting up and saying, this is going to be my race. Absolutely hasn't right now. P4, 10 seconds adrift of Van der Velde.
I wonder how much the rain has played a part in that as well. Normally when you're practicing for these races, you practice in the dry. You don't normally have a scenario for if it starts to rain. If you do, it's a very late put together plan B. So that might have been something that caught Marley out then. Would have been a shame to see him in that wet weather pace. Would have loved to have seen a dry race. Would have loved to see Marley up there. But right now, he's got another battle on his hands. It's the battle for 4th place. He wants to try and hold on from it from his teammate, Hamada Akizi. Of course, we say teammates. They are out for themselves here. There's no team championship. So Akizi right on the back here through this penultimate corner at Druid's Corner.
Wonderful bits of work. You can still see some of the spray kicking up, and Akizi now moving to the inside, looking to lunge late at Lodge to get it done. Has he gone a bit deep? No, he hasn't. Nice and gathered up and plants it in the middle of the road on the exit, so there'll be no run for the Ginetta heading towards Old Hill Corner, and that is a very nice move, or Old Hall Corner I should say. That's a very nice move to take that 4th place away from Mali to Akizi. So now that's another bit of focus that's going to be kept in the back of the mind, and now you just got to keep your head down and focus for those final 15 minutes. And who will be making the right call out there? There is Luke Whitehead. That gap now up to 6.2 seconds. And it's not a case of Nola being slow. It's a case of Whitehead being quick.
It is indeed, and he showed us that in qualifying by putting it on pole position by pretty much 3/4 of a second. He is mightily quick out here on another level today as he now makes his way through in towards Knickerbrook, now climbing Clay Hill and towards Water Tower, towards Druids Corner as well. There is Jack Nola in second place. He had a brief stint in the lead of this race, all but a spin at Hislops, which really stunted that battle we had for the lead of this race. Marley then finds himself now under pressure from Sheldon Muscat then in that big Mercedes. It's an intimidating figure in this GT4 series, and Sheldon Muscat fancies his chances to grab 5th place.
I'm pretty sure he does, and there's still that element of doubt with the track and when that crossover point is going to be from damp to dry as they go through. It's worth keeping in mind here that we've got a very low track temperature of 14 degrees. It's 13 degrees out there on track as there's a little look to the inside from Muscat, just trying to get in the mirrors then of Taham Ali just in front. But those low temperatures out there on track, that's going to make that evaporation process very difficult around this place to see how that rain is going to come off of the circuit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That evaporation process, which works so well at other circuits, when you come to a circuit in Britain, if it's not in the summer, it's going to take a long time. You're really relying on the drivers using their wet weather tyres to just disperse the water away from the racing line, try and create a dry racing line. In 13 minutes time, I can't really see any of the runners in the pointy end of the field taking the risk on dry tyres. Sheldon Muscat here looking for that move up the inside of Marley then, but no way through this long left-hander at Island Bend, and Sheldon Muscat knows all too well about the grass. He's already been there once today.
He has, and he will definitely not want to go there again as they continue on their merry ways looking for their moves. Now I wonder how much time you'd actually make up if you had that chance to pit and move on to the dry tyre, because this is where you're getting that ebb and flow. Are you going to gain back 20-30 seconds by coming down into the pits and going on to the dry? Initially you won't, but then later on, the longer that you stay out there, they will. So it might be a case here with 12-13 minutes to go that you're not going to get that benefit out of 6-7 laps to gain all the time you'd lose in a pit stop.
I think it's a tough one because the wet weather tyres are okay in the dry. They'll start to overheat, but on a track temperature that's 14 degrees Celsius, you might not get too bad tyre performance out of the wet weather tyres. If we were talking about dry to wet, completely different story because it's a test of which drivers will want to brave it to get to the end. But I think most of these drivers will be a bit risk averse. With 12 minutes to go, I don't think there's a huge amount of time to be gained by pitting onto dries now.
Well, not a huge time, but you can see Muscat going well over to the right-hand side there of the circuit, searching for any bit of dampness out there to cool down those tyres over the course of that opening corner there at Old Hall as they descend down the avenue at Denton's the right, and it's such a deceptive right here in towards this left. Denton's to the Cascade. You do have to lift ever so slightly as you go through.
You do indeed, especially in those tricky conditions, let alone in the dry. You sort of have to lift in these GT4 cars, let alone when there's just a sprinkling of water out onto the track. Then Taham Ali, 5th place right now, but Sheldon Muscat, that intimidating Mercedes right behind the GT Omega RPM Esports Mercedes, the number 14 car, back onto the power on the exit of the Shell Oils corner, now making away, sizing up Britain's chicane. You can see pretty much straight with the steering wheel there in towards the bit of curb then, that really aggressive line in towards the curb, and look how close he is now to the back of the Ginetta. Over hilltop we go, and now in towards Hislops. A little bit of a tap to the Ginetta behind, and Taham Ali manages to keep under control then, very well held from the Ginetta. You saw there Sheldon Muscat backing out completely after that.
Yeah, no surprises there. Sheldon Muscat has got a machine which is very strong in a straight line. Not so much for the Ginetta, but it's so good through the corners that it's able to gain back that time that it would have traditionally lost. So that at least is the focus as they go through. A little bit of a wiggle coming out of then Druids and over towards the Lodge corner. Again, it's been defended now on the inside as they go through. And it is very clear to see how they are scrapping and squabbling around for these places. And they really do not want to give this one away, especially late on with all that is going on out there on track and all of how they are fighting around for these positions. Worth keeping an eye out on places fighting a little bit lower down. Oscar Saristo, for example, in a scrap for 12th place.
Yes, every point here matters in this championship. Of course, the top 6 get some sort of prize, so it's well worth making sure you get to the line with as many points as possible. When we head to Kailami in 2 weeks' time, all starts again about who will try and get the most amount of points on the board. It's been a challenging day for these drivers, and there's less than 10 minutes of this race to go. Look at Sheldon Muscat really turning up the wick now, turning up the heat, and the Ginetta lights up the rear tyres. This is Muscat's opportunity, and he can try and use that little bit of run down in towards this first chicane. Britton's then has the inside line, but he'll have the worst getaway, the worst drive out of the corner. This is though he will use that engine power that the Mercedes has now as we head over hilltop down towards his slots, but nowhere to go once again for the Mercedes, and the Ginetta of Marley manages to hang on to 5th place.
And this is what you find when you go and race. Everyone tells you rule 101 of the 101 handbook is, again, wide off of the corner goes to Hamali, who's really having to make that Ginetta wide going on through. You're told go to the inside. It's easier to make an overtake on the inside, but when you're on the outside, you have that ability to pinch, and that's what we saw with Tahamali over there at Britain's. He pinched on Muscat, gave him nothing to work with, and again, there is nothing to work with going through at Lodge Corner. So once more, this becomes a waiting game as they figure out where can the move be done, if at all, in the final 8 minutes 45 seconds. Another little look to the inside.
Yeah, no way through so far then, with just over 8.5 minutes to go. You can see there is a dry line starting to form though on that racing line. So this is where now the drivers will be trying to see if they can keep their wet weather tyres intact here. You see Sheldon Muscat taking a wider line, cooling those tyres, and you can see there Marley with that better handling Ginetta pulling a gap then as they make their way through. There you can see Sheldon Muscat then going over to the right hand side of your picture, the left hand side of the track, just to get some temperature back into the tyres.
Yeah, and it's that temperature in the tyres that we'll be keeping a full focus on at this point in time, because if you can keep the temperature in the tyres, you're good out there on the wet. But on the dries, it's very much a different story. So if they are going to be struggling with that tyre life, you're going to be having a lot of drivers, some very, very expensively hot tyres, trying to get themselves through. There is the battle. Urbrick and Saristo for position. There tries Saristo. He's not quite there with an angle just yet. This long left is so committed in the wet as you go through, because you know you've got to try and set up for here.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult as well. You've got to try and turn in. You've got to make sure you keep the pace up, but you've also got to start to slow the car down as you make your way in towards Shell Oil's corner. So very, very tricky, a very deceiving corner by the eye there. As soon as you put a car around there, you will see how difficult that corner becomes. Saristo then really eager to grab this 12th place though, riding on board with him as he tries to find a way past the McLaren of Jan-Nicolas Urbrick. Down through Hilltop we go and in towards Hislops once again in this race, trying to find the grip, making sure he can get the power down. Now making our way through the right-hander at Knickerbrook, back onto the power once again, and it just looks like the McLaren has the position for now and will start to pull away thanks to that better exit.
We've now got a track state which is not damp, it is greasy out there. So this is right on the crossover, you would say, between wet and dry tyres. We've not got a damp track, we've got a greasy track out there. So here's a little think to the inside again, trying to go through. No real looks about it right now, but all of these drivers, they are all going to have to stay out right now, bite the bullet for a final 6 minutes of this race, because they have no discernible advantage of a time that they are losing going down into the pits compared to the tyres that they've got on.
Yes, absolutely. They'll have to be careful here, as that is Hamada Akizi as well, really taking liberties with the curb there, attacking them like he's got no suspension to damage. Taha Mali, though, starting to try and pull away from Sheldon Muscat then as we head down the hill in towards Hislops and then in towards the right-hander of Knickerbrook then. And I have to say, Mali has done really, really well to hang on to 5th place here. Sheldon Muscat has really turned up the heat, turned up the wicket. At the moment, Mali has done fantastically well to do the defensive job that he needs to do. multiple occasions, Sheldon Muscat has tried to stick a nose up the inside and even try to move round the outside. Taha Mali was on the outside at one point and still managed to hold on to the position. This drive alone to hold on to 5th place has been a really, really good one from the Ginetta driver.
Yeah, and this has been a real fighting performance from the championship leader. Yes, he's going to lose that margin at the front as Tinko van der Velde finds himself very comfortably in 3rd position right now, just driving out there all on his own, making sure that he's keeping himself in check as the final few minutes tick themselves down. You've still got this battle going on, and it's worth keeping an eye out then on Pokey, who went, of course, to the dry compound tyres. We assume that has happened, and now making that charge here all the way through. You can see Mercieka with that big damage to the front bonnet. It looks like it's about to pop off at any moment.
It really, really does, as Polky tries to find a way through there, and he might just have it there as he swoops past Mercieka and up into 14th place. Mercieka looks like he's starting to struggle with those tyres and just trying to make sure he gets that car to the end. Polky has absolutely no doubt about that one, as we see Erbrich then and Saristo. Once again, we've rejoined that battle for 12th place as they descend all the way through in towards Denton's and now towards Cascades, as the Alpine car just having to try and slow down a bit more than maybe they expected. As there goes Samir Foch. We haven't seen a lot of him in this race. That's his camera time, as we see now behind him the battle for 12th place. In through the long left-hander of Island Bend they go. Seems like it goes on for an age here. Then you have to try and flick the car back into a straight line to slow it down even more for the right-hander of Shell Oil's corner. But Saristo is not going anywhere anytime soon, and Yannick Serbrick is making sure of that.
He certainly is, and Erbrich is doing a great job of holding this one off, and they're going to be driving effectively on stalks here as they go through. They're taking the dry line, they're making sure they're driving with all that they've got. The gap at the front now is up to 13.5 seconds, so Luke Whitehead is putting in chunks of time at the front, but at least for the moment, the DJ racing car of Jan-Nicolas Erbrich is looking behind in his final 3 minutes and goes, well, the only thing I've got to do is defend and maintain a gap, and he's doing just about enough right now.
Just about enough is all you need to do at this stage. Luke Whitehead then, there's the race leader. We haven't seen a lot of him since around about 20 minutes ago when he was having that battle with Jack Noller that ended in a Noller spin. However, he's built a 13.7 second lead over Jack Noller, and although he made that mistake coming out of Cascades, although he spun up the rear tyres and lost control, had a slight snag of the barrier on his way back through, it's been pretty much faultless from then on. He's done a really good job, a really good recovery drive. Could have easily lost the plot then, but had other ideas in his mind, retaken the lead, got back on it, got his concentration back up, and now leads by nearly 14 seconds.
Sort of reminds you about 2008 and Lewis Hamilton at the British Grand Prix. Very similar circumstances then between Hamilton and Whitehead, you would say, in terms of those styles of drives. But at least for the moment, it's still more focusing on defence for Jan-Nicolas Erbrich. Saristo is looking every which way. A little twitch there, going into the island bend, and once more to the Shell Oil's corner. Here, this banked hairpin carousel-esque as you go on through and trying to put the power down. Saristo just doesn't have a channel or a lane to go and make something happen here.
Not at the moment, but he'll certainly keep on looking for it as we head in towards the chicane here at Britain's, and now back onto the power over Hilltop we will go. And once again, Saristo has a little bit of toe now down towards Hislops before that braking zone. But you see that McLaren pulling away from the Alpine then in that little bit of a stretch down towards Hislops, now in towards Knickerbrook then through this right-hander as both cars trying to take slightly different lines. And that Alpine looks like he's got a great exit. There's Jimmy Holm then trying to catch up to the back of Simon Spett then, and Sheldon Muscat is into the pits.
Well, that's very, very late for Muscat to make a stop. He may have not put enough fuel in the car. He may have underestimated how much revs he would have with the track drying up and himself going quicker. So with that miscalculation, he's in trouble. Erbrich side-by-side contact there between himself and Saristo. Saristo's done very well in a rear-wheel drive car to keep that one from snapping the tail around on him as he tried to save it. So Erbrich then will move up another position and will find himself now in 12th as things stand. But there is Luke Whitehead at this stage. There will be one more lap to go.
There will be indeed, and he will enjoy this one. He's had He's not made it easy for himself in this race, really, has he? But we wouldn't have it really any other way. Had that spin about just before or just in that halfway stage in this race, as we now make our way onto the final lap.
The final lap then for Luke Whitehead. His control of this race is fantastic. He gets the call from the race marshal to say, yes, you are on the final lap. There is Simon Speth looking behind him now. That is Mercieka trying to unlap himself in comparison to these two. Jimmy Holm will be now on the back trying to go through. And I wonder how intensely Simon Speth is actually fuel saving at this point in time. It looks like a few drivers were not really too good at calculating the numbers. We saw Muscat had to come in and make a stop, and the lift and coast here in these dry or these greasy conditions right now aren't going to be ideal. Zeros hit on the clock. We are officially now out of time. So if you are going to make something happen, you're going to have to be brave and work it out. As on the brakes into the Lodge corner once more, Speth just trying to take the middle of the road, take that racing line away. So we take our focus back to Whitehead, who's making that charge over towards then the Hislop chicane and the Knickerbrook corner, one of the most famous names in all of British track racing. That pond in the background, that lake there, is a little bit fuller than it was when we started this race outright. But for one small spin for Luke Whitehead, the recovery job, the driving has been absolutely remarkable. Forced an error out of Jack Noller there at Hislops, and from that point on, he's been pulling away. It's over a second a lap from this point to the end of this race. He's only got the Lodge to go and pass. He'll then jump over the Deer Leap, and from that point onwards, Luke Whitehead, he's got nothing more to worry about. Welcome to control of the championship of your AMD GT4s. It's Luke Whitehead who wins at Oulton Park.
He didn't make it easy, but he's got the win, and he scores the full 35 points, taking his first race win of the series. Then Jack Noller will be coming around the final couple of corners. He makes his way through Deer Leap and on towards the start-finish line. Second place, a very respectable drive from Jack Noller then as he crosses the line to take another podium in the series. And then it's going to be Tinko van der Velde who will come across the line then to take third place. It's his first podium of the series here. And Taha Marley, well, he's done exceptionally well here, as we saw Sheldon Muscat have to come into the pits. A little bit of a sideways moment there for Taha Mali. He won't care though. He flashes his lights. Fourth place for him, and Hamada Akizi will follow him home just over 2 tenths behind then as Hamada Akizi rounds off fifth place. 12th place though, this battle is still not done as the drivers now make their way towards the final couple of corners. In towards Druid's corner we will go. Erbrick still hanging on here. He's only got a couple more corners to go as Saristo right on the back of him there. Oh, he's lost the back end and into the wall he goes. He hired that high-risk manoeuvre, that high-risk strategy, heavy on the push, but he found himself into the wall, and Jan-Nicolas Erbrick here will cruise his way towards the line then as we make our way through Deer Leap. He'll get 12th place, and Saristo, fair play for him to having a go, but 13th place is all he will get in that SOP Motorsport Alpine car. And it's Timu Polki who'll be the last driver on a flying lap here, or at least on a lap yet to take the checkered flag. But really good driving here, really good racing all around, and at the end of the day, Luke Whitehead having a 17-second lead really doesn't sum up this race enough.
No, it doesn't. There you can see the penalties being applied for incidents now for Mika Mercieka, as he's now got 30 seconds of them at the end. But a wonderful race then with Luke Whitehead taking full command here at Oulton Park of not just the race but the championship. And really, you could say, Kieran, it was never going to look any other way in terms of the way that he was trying to make this one happen. He just put together a really, really solid game plan, had a set that worked for him, and he was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else and only got better as the track dried out.
He always had the pace. We saw him in practice, we saw him in qualifying. He had some really good pace on him. It may not have been a case of if he was going to win this race, but how many seconds he was going to win this by. And those 17 seconds really don't sum up the race he had. He had that spin at Cascade. He lost the lead of the race to Jack Noller. He had to fight for it back before Jack Noller got onto the grass then as he went through Hislops. It was not an easy race, not by a long shot for Luke Whitehead, but he managed to get back under control. He managed to get his concentration back and get a commanding lead by the end of the race once again.
He certainly did, but we are going to grab in a few drivers for interviews. First and foremost, the driver who came home in third position, that being Tinko van der Velde. And Tinko, it seemed at least in the early stages like you were being kept quite busy, but then from about 20 minutes on into the race, it seemed like everything just evaporated around you, like the rain did potentially, and you found yourself with a very lonely race to third.
Yeah, it was, I had a really good start. I was so happy to get into P3 after some mistakes from the other drivers. Afterwards, I could just drive away. They made some mistake, I think they crashed, I don't know what happened. And then the rain seemed to dry out, so that was quite scary, but we managed to finish the race on the wets nevertheless.
So a very good finish for you in the Aston Martin. You've been putting in some really consistent points finishes on top of that as well. So a fourth and a third to start out your season. You must be really pleased with just how much of an effort you've been putting in so far, and that maybe the Aston Martin has been a really good all-rounder for you over the course of the season so far.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy, but today the car seemed really slow compared to the Audi. Like, Luke was so quick today. I don't know if he was actually in the GT4 version or the GT3. That was unreal. But I hope next rounds I will be a little bit closer to him to fight for the lead.
Of course, we go to a very balanced track in terms of characteristics. Kyalami in 2 weeks' time. Do you feel that, like, the Aston Martin maybe might just have a little bit of an easier time of things there in comparison maybe to what's been going on here today at Oulton Park?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't drive GT4s a lot, and I've never really driven them on Kyalami, so I don't know how the BOP is there, but hopefully I'll be closer.
Well, that's 2 weeks to figure that out, but Tinko, before we let you go, shout out sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank after what is a very strong first podium of the season.
Yeah, of course, I want to thank my team, Sidemax Motorworks. They've really helped me grow and get really quick on this game, so I really want to thank them.
No worries at all. Tinko van der Velde then picking up third position. Kieran, I believe you've walked down to the GTO Mega box and you found a Jack Noller.
I have found a Jack Noller, that's for sure. Jack, second place in that race then, but that doesn't really sum up what on earth happened out there, because at one point you were leading that race. I suppose the first thing I need to ask you is, what happened at Hislops?
I think it was Luke's race to lose. He had amazing pace, and that Audi is so good in the wet. So I tried holding him up as much as I could once I was in front. So yeah, I just locked the rear axle going into the corner. As soon as I hit the brakes, I knew it was too late, so I had to try and make the corner. Otherwise, he would have got past anyway. So yeah, the Porsche is really sensitive on the brakes, and as I turned in, the rear axle locked, and that was round I went. But fortunately, it was in a place I could just quickly keep the spin going. Ultimately, keep second place.
Yeah, and speaking of second place, that's your second place of the series so far. So a strong points haul so far for you in this season. And I think I'm right in thinking that only Luke Whitehead is the driver ahead of you in the series. So a not bad 2 first rounds. How do you think it's gone so far?
Really good start. I've got 2 second places, Luke a third and the first. I think it could be really close. And I think generally it's really close. In the whole field, maybe today was a bit more spread out, but that was just luck of a draw. That was the first ever race I've done in a GT4 in the wet, so I think the same for Luke as well. So it was just a matter of just keeping on the track and seeing what happened. So I was really happy with qualifying. I think better than I would have been even in the dry, and then just trying to keep the Audi honest. He made a mistake, which is a shame, but he managed to get back past me in the end, and very happy with P2.
And in that last quarter of the race, we did see a dry line starting to form. So how were the tyres towards the end of that stint? Did you struggle with any overheating at all?
The rear tyres were red and front tyres are orange. PSIs weren't too bad, 31, 32, about 1 or 2 degrees over optimum, but not the end of the world. Just driving offline to try and cool it down at the end, just driving within myself just to get to the end of the race.
And just quickly then for Kyalami, as we look ahead to the next round in 2 weeks' time, how are you feeling there? What's the confidence levels up, and can you make it another podium?
do hope to make another podium, keep it up this week. I'm not sure how well the BOP is for the Porsche around there. I've done a Porsche GT4 only race around there a little while ago, so I don't know how it stacks up against the other cars, but looking at the CDA lap times, not too favourably, but still give it my best shot and see how it goes.
Well, Jack, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Congratulations on your second place in this race. The floor's yours for any shout-outs, any sponsors you'd like to thank.
To, of course, GTO Mega, Gaming Malta, as well as HyperX, and yourselves here at World Pro Racing. And thanks again to everyone watching. Hopefully there was some fights throughout the field today, and maybe the battle for the lead for that little bit during the stops was interesting. All right then.
Well, interesting, certainly one word for it. We certainly enjoyed it. But Jack, congratulations on your second place. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And Jake, I believe you're now with our race winner.
I have found Luke Whitehead here. Luke, that was a race where by pace you were head and shoulders above the field, but it wouldn't be remiss of us to talk about the one moment in that race where it probably didn't go right for you, which was at Island Bend.
I was rather hoping you wouldn't mention that, to be honest. I'm still very frustrated about that, if I'm completely honest. You know, it was a mistake that I didn't need to make. It was just, I didn't need to make it. I had a gap of about, I think, 10 seconds at the time. I was pulling away by a big gap per lap, and I just sort of lapsed in concentration for just a split second, and then, you know, around that corner, there's absolutely no margin for error anyway. So, you know, I just missed the curb by, I think, about, you know, probably a foot, less than a foot, and you know, the car just didn't turn. I clipped the grass, and once you clip the grass from there, the car's gone completely. So very frustrating. But you know, it made the race a lot more challenging, and it made it a lot more entertaining from my part. Obviously, having to hunt down Jack again, who was, I was helped quite a lot by him being stuck behind the McLaren. I think it was Erblick when he came out of the pits. So I was helped a lot by that. But I think, you know, the pace was a lot better than I expected. You know, I did no testing in the wet, and I've only ever driven this car once in the wet at the Snetterton special event, the one that Assetto Corsa sort of holds. It's a time trial event, second in the world there. So I knew I was decent in the Audi, but I just didn't know how it would stack up against the rest of the cars. But you know, I'm happy with the result. You know, well done to Jack and Tinko. They both drove brilliant races, and also Taha Maleh and Hamada, you know, my two teammates. They both drove really well. I saw that they had a very big battle. I think there was about 7 or 8 cars in the train at the start of the race. So I was watching that with bated breath, you know, to see who would come out on top. But yeah, really fun race, and I'm happy with the outcome in the end.
Of course, really happy with the outcome. You found the result that you needed. You've got the championship lead now by solitary point heading to Kyalami, and really you go to a track which from what was a little bit more difficult over at Spa-Francorchamps to here where you were head and shoulders above the field. Are you just gaining more confidence with the car, and is it that confidence which is propelling you forward more than the overall setup work which is going to maybe come into play over at Kyalami?
The helpful thing is with these GT4 cars, I don't drive them a lot, but the helpful thing is there's not a huge amount that you can change to gain a lot of time. You know, in GT3 you can change the bump stop rates, you can change the dampers a huge amount, you can change the aero, you can change the weight transfer. You know, there's a huge amount that you can change. Whereas in GT4, quite a lot of it's been restricted. I think there's only 3 or 4 different aero settings in the Audi. I think there's only a few, you know, ride height changes that you can make, and you can't change the bump stop range or many of the damper settings. So it's very limited. So I know where I'm at roughly with the same setup for every track. I made a couple of adjustments to the setup for the rain, obviously, but yeah, the car was brilliant here. I knew it was going to be good because I know it rides the curbs like a dream, and I think it showed that. You know, through the middle sector, I think I was about 4.5 tenths quicker than anyone in the dry, and I think about 3.5 tenths quicker than anyone in the wet through that, which is where you need to launch the curbs. But you know, looking towards Kyalami, I'm not sure what to expect whatsoever. You know, I knew roughly where I'd be at Oulton because obviously I'd looked at British GT Esports, I looked at the times they were doing, and in the dry, I think I was quicker than what they were doing there. So Kyalami, completely blank slate, but a track that I like quite a lot. So, you know, hopefully it goes well, but I know that the Astons are extremely quick, and the Ginetta and the Porsche. I've driven all 3 in there. Absolutely insane around there. But, you know, we'll have to see where we go. I mean, Spa was a track that the car was very weak at, and we still managed to grab a podium. So, you know, we'll just have to see where we go. And again, damage limitation is the key, and consistency is the key.
Well, it certainly is, and it's been a dream drive from you today. Before we let you go, Luke, shout out sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank.
As I mentioned earlier, massive thank you to H3 Racing as well. You know, for all their help recently. You know, I'm racing with them in GT World Challenge, or racing under the WRT banner, which is a massive, massive privilege and a massive opportunity for me. And I honestly cannot thank those guys enough. You know, it's with Hamada, Red One, and one of the SDL guys, Kevin Leon. You know, they're all brilliant drivers, and it's a pleasure to be racing alongside them. A massive well done as well to Taha, to Hamada, to Jack, and to Tinko. You know, they all drove really brilliant races, and I saw that Tinko and that they had a big battle. So well done for those guys for keeping it clean. I think, you know, none of them really lost lots of places. I think they all finished, you know, relatively where they were at the start of the race. So, you know, it's nice to see those battles throughout the field. You know, and also finally to close it out, massive thank you to everyone who was watching. My mum, my dad, a lot of my friends as well, and my girlfriend who's watching. You know, massive thank you to all of those guys for tuning in as always. And yeah, to all of you at home, I hope you enjoyed the race.
Well, he sounds like he's got all of his ducks lined up in a row right now, Luke Whitehead. A big result then for him today, a victory and the championship lead on top of that. But Kieran, this is where we start to bring things to a close. Our focus now turning, of course, to 2 weeks from now and Kyle Army. Just what are we looking to expect from what is a very technical track here to probably the most premier racing circuit on the African continent?
So, as you said, the Kyle Army circuit is a balanced circuit. It's an opportunity for many of these cars to have their strengths and their weaknesses exposed to the world. So we'll have to wait and see who can come out on top, and if anybody can really get the car set up absolutely spot on, see who can take advantage of that. I can't wait, and the only problem is it's 2 weeks away.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a problem, but we do have things in the meanwhile that you can watch with us at World Pro Racing, be it wherever you've had the chance to watch it, be it on YouTube, Facebook Live, on Twitch, be it with motorsport.tv, ESTV, the Esports Television Network, and with TVM Sport. We've got Mega Sprint Tuesdays coming up next week. That will be something fantastic to keep an eye out on. And the week after that, the Duo Series will be coming back for some more action, so you definitely want to check that out. Of course, tomorrow we got the GT3 Sprint Series coming up. You can join Kieran and the gang over for that element of action, but at least for the action that we have brought to you here today, a massive thanks has to go to the stewarding team who have put things on behind the scenes. Adrian Fagayo and George Muscat have been putting in a stellar job trying to make sure that this race runs without a hitch. From, of course, Justin and Nathan Mifsud, who have been on the cameras as well, keeping an eye on proceedings. Kieran McGinley, Jake Sperry. It is Luke Whitehead's time to shine. Championship lead heading to the halfway race at Kyle Army. But it is another technical circuit. It is another one which puts a cat amongst pigeons. And who could maybe chase down what was an incredible run to get things going? Can Jack Noller maybe close the gap? Maybe we could see Tinko van der Velde make some progress. Or a return to form for Taha Mali. Anything's possible here with the action we got going on. And we will see you very soon where sim racing becomes real.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.